Hi, I'm here to teach you guys how to solve systems of equations by substitution now. Substitution is another method of solving equations, but notice that your systems of equations should always have an answer that includes both an x and a y. It should be an ordered pair. Should have an x comma y answer. But we got to be careful on this question because they directly ask me for what is the x value of the answer. So at the end, make sure that you go back and answer the question, all right? So let's talk about what substitution is. When I'm substituting something, it means that you're replacing one thing with another. Another word that you see a lot when it comes to substitution and solving with substitution is the word isolation. Trying to leave one letter completely by itself. When we isolate something, when we isolate a letter, then it makes substitution so much easier. So let's look at the options that we have for isolation. So let's look at all the letters that we're given here. In our equations, we had 3x minus 8y is equal to 11 and 2y plus x is equal to 13. So here, we're trying to find the letter that is easiest to isolate, to leave but completely by itself. So out of all of those options that I highlighted, which one is the easiest to leave alone? It should be this x. It should be the x because there's no letter or any numbers in front of it. It makes it so much easier to deal with. So always try to isolate the letter that doesn't have anything in front, any coefficients. All right, so when we're isolating it, we're trying to leave it completely by itself. So what letter needs to go away here if we're trying to leave the x by itself? That 2y. Notice this is a positive 2y. So how would I get rid of that positive 2y? You would do its opposite. So to get rid of that 2y, you would put a negative 2y. Not just to one side of the equal sign, but to both sides of the equal signs. Notice that I did not line up the 13 and the negative 2y because one has a letter, the other one does not. So you cannot combine those together. You can only put them next to each other, but they do not combine. All right, so what is positive 2y minus 2y? It gives me 0. So those go away. And now we're left with the x by itself. We got x is equal to 13 minus 2y. So once we have isolated, now let's go back and substitute. So anytime you're given an x, you are going to replace that with 13 minus 2y. Notice that I can only substitute back into the equation that we have not used. So here, let's say we have equation 1 and equation 2. We isolated equation 2, so I cannot go back and plug it into equation 2. It has to go back to equation number 1. So anytime on equation 1, I see an x, I am going to replace it with 13 minus 2y. So let me write down equation 1 again. We got 3x minus 8y is equal to 11. So anytime I see that x, what am I going to replace it with? 13 minus 2y. So where I see that x, I'm going to replace it with 13 minus 2y. That is the only place that I see it, so that's the only place it gets replaced. All right, and now look at this equation that we got. It only has the letter y in it, so it makes it easy for me to get the y by itself. So my goal right now is to solve for y, to get the y completely by itself. So now let's go back and solve using our regular solving methods. So if we're trying to leave the y by itself, the first thing that we need to do is get rid of parentheses. So in front of that parentheses, I got a 3. So you're going to distribute that 3 to everything inside. So what's 3 times 13? It is 39. 3 times negative 2 gives me negative 6y. All right, and everything else we're just going to bring down. The negative 8y and the 11. Notice that my y's are not completely alone yet, but I do have 2 of them. So what can I do with those 2? I can combine them together. Because they're both negative, you're going to add them together. I'm going to get 14. And because they're both negative, it should stay a negative 14 and a y. All right, my y is not completely alone yet. So the next step is to get rid of that 39. I would subtract 39 from both sides. All right, we have a positive 11 and a negative 39. Because they're opposite signs, I'm going to subtract them. I'm going to get 28. Because the 39 was bigger, my 28 should also be negative. All right, so these two should cross out. This should give me 0, and you should bring down the negative 14y. All right, we're almost done. This is negative 14 times y. So to get rid of that negative 14, I would have to divide both sides by negative 14. Negative 14 divided by negative 14 gives me 1. Cancels out. And negative 28 divided by negative 14 is positive 2. 2 negatives will give me a positive. So we have now one of our numbers. We have the 2. But notice that that's the more insignificant part of our answer because we're looking for the x value of my answer. So now I have to go back and substitute once more. So where I see a y on equation number 2, I'm going to replace that y with a 2. All right, so let me get rid of that arrow so we can have more space. So let me take this equation, that x is equal to 13 minus 2y. Let's take that equation already because now the x is completely alone. So once we plug it in there, we should have right away what x is equal to. So again, anytime I see a y, I'm going to replace it with a positive 2. So instead of having a y here, I'm going to have a 2. All right, so what is 2 times 2? Or negative 2 times 2? 2 times 2 is 4, and it should be a negative 4. All right, so what is 13 minus 4? It is 9. So x is equal to my 9 here. So that means that my x of my coordinate pair is a 9. The x of my answer or my solution is 9. So when they ask me for what is the x value of my solution, you would pick the 9. Whatever answer choice has 9 as the answer choice. All right, so that's all you have to do to find your answer when you're substituting.